one. The Roman soldiers came, and it was about persecution and being arrested. So the one taken is the unfortunate one. The one left behind was the one who escaped the persecution. But this lady turned it all around and said, no, the one taken is the blessed one. And the one left behind, that's the unfortunate one. But that was a new thing in history. It just kind of blew me away. I didn't know that. I learned that the book of Revelation can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. I was surprised to find out that the majority of people throughout history and the majority of scholars today don't think that is a book that is primarily about the future. That's a fairly recent reading of the book of Revelation. I didn't know that. It always struck me as odd, to be honest with you here, and I'm always trying to be honest with you. But I thought it was odd that God would put a whole book of the Bible in the Bible that would only become clear the last 7 years of history. And that, after all the Christians are gone and it's too late. It just struck me as odd. That, people, they'll have great hindsight, but by then it'll be too late. I just thought that is odd. But the majority of scholars think that this is an apocalyptic book. That's the genre or the kind of literature it is. And they often spoke of future things to communicate timeless realities. It has a future application, but it also communicates truths that are going on, all the time in different places with different degrees of intensity. But it means that in that view, trying to correlate specific events with specific passages in Revelation just is misinterpreting the book of Revelation. And as I read more and learned a little bit more, I found that some of the metaphors that are used to describe the end times were not meant to be taken literally. For example, the phrase that the sun will grow dark and the moon will turn to blood and the stars will fall from the sky. Those were standard metaphors that were used. In fact, you find them several times in the Bible. And no one took those literally. It was like saying it's raining cats and dogs in our culture. It was, we don't mean it literally, but it was a way of saying in the ancient world, the world as you know it is coming to an end. That's why you find these phrases being repeated, even though the sun never literally grew dark, and the moon never literally turned to blood, and the stars never literally fell to the ground. 3 times in the book of Revelation it talks about the stars being cast down to the ground. And they fall to the ground like figs, it says in the book of Revelation. And I remember hearing a preacher in my early fundamentalist days of Christianity who was saying, don't listen to what those liberal scientists tell you that those are giant balls of helium out there billions of miles away. My Bible says that they're the size of figs, and one of these days they're going to fall to the ground. I rest my case. Well, folks, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the world as you know it coming to an end. So I just came to see that way of approaching things, that literal way of reading the book of Revelation like it was the last 7 years of history or something of the sort was just wrong-headed. And I also came to believe that it was something of a distraction, in fact, a massive distraction. To obsess on end-time stuff, to obsess on whether the rapture is literal or figurative, or whether it's going to happen before the tribulation period, or during the tribulation period, or after the tribulation period. Are you pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib? And is the tribulation 3.5 years, or 7 years, or 14 years? Those are your options, folks. And you talk to some folks, and if you don't have the right view of the tribulation period, I don't know if you're really even going to be in the rapture. And then is the tribulation period before or after the millennium? And is the millennium literal, or is it figurative? And on and on and on. And who, after all, is the Antichrist? And obsessing on that stuff, well, I ask myself the question, what possible difference could that make? Honestly. It has about the same relevancy as us sitting around and speculating how we're going to die. Will it be a car wreck or cancer? If it's cancer, will it be in my kidney or in my lungs? If it is in my lungs, will I get radioactive treatment or not? You know what? It will take care of itself. Deal with it when it comes. Right now, live. And I honestly came to the conclusion that a preoccupation with those sorts of details borders on divination, which the Bible consistently forbids. Divination is where you're trying to get a crystal ball and peek into the future to satisfy your curiosity. Reading the Bible like it's a cryptogram and you're trying to decode it, spending enormous amounts of time and energy trying to assess who is what and when it happens and how it happens, is not all that different from going to a tea leaf reader or a tarot card reader to find out the details of how you're going to die. You see, it really comes down to almost a form of divination. It's a little bit like the servants of the household in the parable that we're talking about. And they're supposed to be taking care of the house, but instead they spend all their time staring out the window, arguing with each other about when and how the master will return. If you're obsessed with when and how the master is going to return, you're not taking care of the house the way the master wants you to take care of the house. You're really acting sort of like teenagers sometimes act when mom and dad leave for a little bit and they say, don't trash the house, and it better be clean when we come back. And instead of taking care of the house, the teenagers are always looking out the window trying to figure out when exactly is mom and dad going to come back. Will they come up the side of the road this way, or will they come down the road this way? Because we want to be able to see when it's happening so we can quick get ready and take care of the house. Well, see, that's not being faithful to what mom and dad told you to do. That's trying to be shrewd and trying to outsmart mom and dad. Look at the point of the passage that we read today is that we don't know when, and it will come at an unexpected time. That's about all we need to know, so be faithful. And so if Jesus says you don't know and it will come unexpected, how about we take him at his word and quit trying to figure out when and how he's going to return and just get around to the work of being faithful. That's the point of the passage. You don't know when, so be faithful. And see, it strikes me as bizarre. There's so much in the house that needs to be done. We live in a world where there's people who are starving, and there are people who are homeless, and there are people who are lost, and people need the good news, and there's so much urgent kingdom work to get done. And yet we still have folks that are sitting around arguing over and putting enormous time in and enormous ink and selling a lot of copies of their books on the rapture charts and the precise chronology of how and when the master is going to come home. No, we don't know when. Could be tonight, could be 10,000 years. We don't know when. So let's be ready. Let's live every day and every hour as though it was our last. And let's be faithful. And that's all we got to worry about. If you're faithful, you don't need to worry about when and how. In fact, if you're faithful, the return of the master is good news. So again, you don't have to worry about when and how. So let's break down this passage. Very quickly, we got 3 major points that this passage is getting at. And none of them have to do with end times speculation. Point number 1 is simply this, very simple. The master is coming back. Jesus is going to return. It's going to happen suddenly. We don't know when. Could happen at any time. Could be today, or could be 1,000 years or 10,000 years. We don't know, and it doesn't matter, because our point is not to figure that out. Our point, our call, is to be faithful. It tells us there's coming a time when God will say about this whole epic of world history that we're a part of right now, done. There's a purpose he's trying to achieve in this epic of world history. And it's about acquiring a bride and things of that sort. And when that purpose is achieved, God will say, done. Jesus will come back. He'll establish his earth he'll establish the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. He'll restore creation to the way creation was meant to be. And that kingdom will last forever. But this one won't. This world is coming to an end. It's finite. It means then, it's a reminder to us that we shouldn't get too attached to this epic, to the world as we see it now. There'll be a new heaven and a new earth. And so don't get too attached to the world that we have right now, to the life that you have right now. It's going to come to an end. It's a reminder that we're not to put too much hope in the leaders of the various nations, or too much hope in the nations themselves, or too much hope in the militaries or anything of the sort, or too much hope in what technology is going to develop, because it's all going to come to an end. And it means we shouldn't get too bent out of shape about what leader is over what nation, about what nation is doing, what a military is doing, or what technology is developing. There are some things that can concern us there, but we shouldn't get too out of shape out of that, because we know that God determines when it's going to end. I really don't think that God's up there saying, oh my gosh, they're going to blow up the world before I want it to be blown up. I don't think he sweats that one. He's the sovereign Lord of history. This thing's not going to come to a close before he wants it to come to a close, so we don't have to sweat that. It's going to come to an end, but not before God wants it to. Now, that doesn't mean we don't care about the things of this world. We just don't worry about them, as we said last week. But that leads to my second point. The master is returning, and we are called to be faithful servants in God's house. We are in charge, entrusted with God's house, and to be about his business. Now, see, in my earliest form of Christianity, the job was to escape the house. He's coming back. He's going to take us out of this house. This house is going to be trashed and destroyed. So why would you worry about the house? Our motto was, just be rapture ready. That was the phrase. Are you rapture ready? And grab someone's hand on the way up. And that's about all you can really, hope to do. What's the point of caring about poverty in this world right now, or injustice, or violence, let alone animals or the environment? Why would you care about that stuff? This whole house is going to hell in a handbasket, as we said.